Because what happens when the FDIC and the ECB suddenly don't have enough money to cover those people that want their money in cash? Like, oh, I'm troubled by what's going on. I'm going to go to the bank and get my money, but it's not there. What happens? Oh, the bank used it and sold it or did something ridiculous with my investments. Okay, well, at least the FDIC will take care of me. Where's my money? I want my insurance. Sorry. So the real story here is that the FDIC only has $200 billion in assets on hand to insure over $9 trillion. How does that math work? $200 billion to cover $9 trillion.
Well, okay, but if they say that only 4% of currency actually exists in physical form, then I don't know what I did do that math off the top of your head.
Well, that means 1.6%. 1.6% of all transactions are covered or insured under this math. Right. 200 billion out of 9 trillion means that like 1.63% is covered under the FDIC. Like if everyone decided, hey, I'm sick of this, I'm scared about this, I'm going to the bank because I want my own money. No, it's
absolutely not possible. But, we had been, even before this change in currency rules based on fractional reserve, we knew that less than 4% of all money in the economy existed in paper form.
Right.
That 96% or more of our currency is based on a belief system of binary codes in a computer. So we already knew that. But now it's probably, that percentage seems even lower. I'm not going to do that off the top of my head and embarrass myself. But, yes, this is like reinforcing existing beliefs. It's a scary belief system when we're at the mercy of people who we don't necessarily trust.
So the bottom line is it's a house of cards. And so now we have our first stunning piece of video from the FDIC and a stunning meeting that they held in November that they don't want you to see. So it just leaked. And this video is out. You're going to see members of the FDIC and other panel discussions in this FDIC meeting. It's not just FDIC members. It's lawyers, it's bankers, but they're all around a table having a meeting admitting that a crash is coming. They're saying this. And they're also saying publicly in this meeting, and they all kind of laugh about it, that they don't have any faith in the banks. They also admit on camera that they don't want you to know this because only people who need to know that it's coming should be notified, i.e. the wealthy. They don't want you to know about this. And they say it in this meeting. You common people shouldn't be told because you would take your money out of the banks and then they wouldn't be able to use your money for bail-in purposes to save the banks. We'll let the rich people know about this, just like in March 2020. They made moves because we alerted them. They sold their stocks. They were in the know. They were fine. And you got screwed. And they're saying this in this meeting. This is the FDIC meeting. I'm going to show you a couple of different sound bites here. This is amazing. Watch.
Should be accessible when people need to know. But I don't think you have much hope of reaching a public that doesn't have a professional need to know.
I completely agree with that. I almost think you'd scare the public if you put this out. Like, why are they telling me this? Should I be concerned about my bank? Like, my insurance company doesn't tell me what they're doing with my assets. They just assume they're going to pay my claim. Right? I think you've got to think of the unintended consequences of taking a public that has more full faith and confidence in the banking system than maybe people in this room do.
You hearing them laughing?
They're laughing. That's really stinking condescending. What I hear from that is like, run along, little girl.
Yeah.
You don't need to know. And also, ever heard of FTX? Because, we don't like that. When we realize that people are doing stuff with our money that's untowards. Turns out not a great idea.
So we don't have faith in the banking system in here, and they all laugh. They're like, yeah, none of us do. We're the FDIC.
We can't tell the little people what's really going on here. It'll just scare them, and their little brains can't handle it.
Because if they do, oh my God, they might panic, and they might actually want their own money that they worked 40 years of their lives for.
We want them to have full faith and confidence in the banking system. They know the FDIC insurance is there. They know it works. They put their money in. They're going to get their money out. So there's a select crowd of people that are in the institutional side And if they want to understand this, they're going to find a way to understand this. There's a bunch of law firms represented in this room. There's a bunch of people who charge them by the hour a lot of money to explain this all to them. And it's fine. I don't have a problem with that. And they all have huge staffs. But I would be careful about the unintended consequences of starting to blast too much of this out in the general public.
I wondered whether there are some market tests of whether you're being heard.
So
there's no adult in that room. Like, yeah, that's fine.
I think about
anybody there who's like, maybe that's a little unethical. Should we have lunch on that? Should we think about that for a minute?
no, because they keep going. And that's just the first little chunk of this. So you're too stupid. We don't want you to know, the average person to know about this. If you're wealthy and you're plugged in, you've got a large legal team and you can pay people by the hour to figure all this stuff out. Yeah, you can figure it out.
I mean,
the average
he kind of
person
has a point.
He does have a point.
You know,
the system is
because
rigged.
like when they announced there was a pandemic, a viral infection, toilet paper was like impossible to get. You know, there was a run on toilet paper. So I get that the fact that there would be a run on the banks, and it could devastate the banks. You know,
it will,
because people, yeah, totally,
because of the way that they're structured.
Exactly.
It's a scam. Like, it's a scam. And the great house of cards is going to come down. When the collapse comes, the FDIC admits that they will send out an announcement. So get ready for this. They admit they will send out an announcement and they will tell us not to use money. This is how that's going to go down. They tell us that they plan on telling us on a Friday night. See if you can guess why they would tell us on a Friday night that the banking system has collapsed. Don't worry, don't use any money. We'll figure this out and we'll take care of you or not. We'll tell you on a Friday night. Listen to her explain when this will happen. Watch.
How would we use targeted guarantees to allay concerns about excess cash use? There's a lot of questions here. And so, there are a lot of things we've been thinking about, and what we want to hear from you today is what you think the priorities would be in order to go about setting expectations appropriately in public about how we would execute Title II, so that if and when we do have to have that announcement on Friday night, ideally Friday night, that people are in a position to receive it, understand it, and say, yeah, that works. And we can see how this will happen. Of course, there will be doubters, but there's a lot of things going on.
Hi, Jim Rickards here. And what I'm holding in my hand is something called a gold back. It's a thinly printed sheet of real gold, wrapped in a nearly indestructible polymer.
Okay, thanks for that.
So Friday night, of course, in the banking system is closed. So people all weekend can just be at home freaking out because, oh, wait a minute, I just lost, what's going to happen with my money?
Yeah.
My bank's going, we're in this economic, what the hell are you going to do about my money? It's gone. They're admitting this is coming. And they're saying that they managed to pull their money to safety. The rich people will pull their money to safety ahead of time. But most people were totally screwed because they weren't in the know. This is what happened in 2020, right? Those people got screwed because they weren't in the room where it happened. They weren't Bill Gates. They didn't get the heads up, the phone call from Nancy Pelosi. Here is how he actually admits that. Some people will be screwed by this. Watch.
Spread should respond to good and bad news about the institutions, and it's really important. I mean, it's a little bit conflicted, right? I mean, it's important that people understand they can be bailed in, but you don't want a huge run on the institution. But they're going to be. And it could be an early warning signal to the FDIC and the primary regulators when these things happen. And there may be some other prices. This is similar to what Jay was saying in the market, that you can tell whether people understand who's going to be protected, who isn't going to be protected. It would be, I think, an interesting study to look at the evolution of market prices in a situation like March of 2020, for example, and see whether people understood what might happen.
I might go further than that, Don, because I think that...
So listen to this next guy. This is unbelievable. So this guy just admitted that most people didn't understand because they weren't educated about it. The people that were in the know managed to be okay. The people that got screwed because they weren't in we wouldn't give them information. Listen, though, to the next guy.
You look at the evolution. I think we have to sit down and talk to long-term debt investors and make sure that they, as a stakeholder group, fully understand bank debt today is not what it was before. It is not principal protected by design. And I think that is that expectation. I like how you started off, Betsy. Like, it's all about expectation setting, and I think that is absolutely critical. If that doesn't hold, this whole thing doesn't hold. And so I think it's one area to focus on.
So if the expectation doesn't hold, then this whole phony house of cards collapses, is basically what he's saying. Did I read that wrong? If the expectation doesn't hold, the expectation that our banking system is fine,
meaning we need
collapses.
to maintain the ruse.
Yes, we need to maintain the facade, is what he's saying.
Okay.
And not just him. We heard that 4 or 5 times around that table. The same thing was said multiple times about the facade, the phoniness of it all.
Yeah.
The house of cards of it all. So journalist Greg...
if you want... sorry, I was just going to say, like, while we're still on that point, if you want, like, a really good example of just absolute evil, like, if you believe that absolute evil exists on the planet, you were just looking at a meeting of it. Because that is just, I mean, it's just like how just almost like flippant and nonchalant they are about, like, yeah, a lot of common people are going to get screwed, but as long as the people that need to know can get their money out so we can secure, you know, the rich so that they're fine, then everybody else is an acceptable loss.
Right. Yes,
I mean, how do you make that decision?
Yes, when he said, well, a lot of people get hurt, let's do a market study to figure out which of those people
understood it.
Which of those people will get hurt.
Oh, right.
Like,
right.
yeah. Some of them will get hurt. That's okay. Acceptable loss. Let's do a market study just so we know exactly who. Meaning you have already made that deal with the devil.
Well, and also to Philip's point, the idea that these people are sitting there waiting for these things to unfold and they're going to see that the rich people will be fine. And he brings up the point throughout the meeting where we've got to try to basically convince these rich people just to keep in the system. It's kind of like the Bernie Madoff story again, right? Mm-hmm. Bernie Madoff trying to convince his biggest investors
not to withdraw.
Like if he can keep those 4 or 5 big guys in the game, then he can support this house of cards. And they make mention of this throughout the meeting, that if we've got to keep the big players.
Yeah.
Really? Who's going to stick around for that? Yeah. When the music stops, will they be standing there? It certainly didn't happen for Bernie Madoff.
Isn't it, Philip? It's like it looks like a Simpsons sketch. All of these,
like Mr. Burns.
I mean,
old powerful people.
You can find this in you can find this in any like Marvel comic for when you got like the meeting of the villains. You go back to the very beginning, and every meeting of villains looks and sounds just like this. Because they're never like trying to like, you know, actually like literally destroy the world. They're always doing something like this, some nefarious, like, this is how we like enslave the entire population to our will. And you're just watching it, and people are just like, hey, no, this is cool. This is fine.
So, it's crazy. So journalist Greg Reese just reported that